All right, today we're diving deep, and I mean really deep, into the very soul of Nepal. We're going to unpack a fascinating argument from Dr. Ryan Baidya, who suggests that Nepal's truest identity isn't political or even geographic. Instead, he says it's that of a Sanatan civilization. So, what on earth does that mean? Well, let's find out together.
When you hear the word Nepal, what's the first thing that pops into your head? For a lot of us, it's probably Mount Everest, right? Or maybe the legendary Gurkha soldiers. And yeah, those are powerful symbols for sure. But they really only scratch the surface. The real question, the one we're tackling today, is what's the deep, unifying current that runs through a nation of such staggering diversity?
To really get a sense of the scale of this challenge, let's just look at some numbers. First up, the population. We're talking about a nation of roughly 31 million people.
Now, within that population, get this, the state officially recognizes 125 distinct ethnic and caste groups.
And just when you think it can't get any more complex, it does. On top of all that, there are 123 different languages spoken as a mother tongue. I mean, wow, it's a true Babel of the Himalayas. And this is where we hit the absolute core of the issue. All of this incredible diversity is a huge source of cultural richness, no doubt. But it's also been a root cause of recurring political instability. So the billion-dollar question is, how in the world do you build a stable, unified nation from such a complex, beautiful mosaic of peoples? Well, the work we're exploring today proposes an answer that looks beyond modern politics, deep into history. It argues that the answer lies in recognizing Nepal's identity not just as a modern nation-state, but as a civilization. The term that's used as Sanatan civilization. And let's be super clear about what this isn't. It's not a single religion. It's described as a broad canopy that includes Hindu, Buddhist, Kirti, and other traditions. Think of it like the underlying cultural software, the operating system that's been shaping how people live, how they mark time, and how they build their towns for centuries. Okay, so that's a pretty big claim, right? So how is it supported? Well, the argument rests on 4 key pillars that you can actually see and observe in daily life. The people, the places, the concept of time, and language. This gives us a really clear roadmap for the evidence, so let's break them down one by one. Our first pillar is the people. The argument starts not with some abstract theory, but with how millions of Nepalis actually live their day-to-day lives. The perspective here is that for a huge majority, life is guided by these Sanatan traditions. This covers everything, from major life cycle rites like weddings and funerals to daily household worship. And that last point is absolutely key. This plural coexistence is presented as routine. It's not a special effort people make. It's just the default setting. Next up, places. The proposition here is really cool, that Nepal's identity is literally carved into its geography and its cities. I mean, just look at how this plays out. You've got Hindu temples and Buddhist stupas coexisting in the very same landscape. And this isn't just about the world-famous sites. It's about the very fabric of towns, where temples and Buddhist monasteries, or viharas, are the natural anchors for markets and public squares. The Kathmandu Valley itself is presented as the ultimate example, not as a collection of separate faiths, but as one single integrated Hindu-Buddhist civilizational city. The third pillar is about something we all share, time. How does a nation collectively decide to mark its year? What does that tell us? Well, the national calendar is basically structured around a cycle of shared festivals. You've got these huge celebrations like Dashain and Tihar that are observed with nationwide enthusiasm, and they really cut across community lines. But so are Buddha Jayanti, the different forms of Losar and Shath. These events don't just mark days on a calendar, they actively reset social bonds and turn public spaces into shared sanctuaries year after year after year. Finally, we get to the most complex piece of the puzzle, language. With 123 mother tongues, how can this possibly be a source of unity? The idea put forward is both subtle and really powerful. It suggests that while the words themselves are different, the underlying civilizational grammar is shared. Core ethical concepts, ideas about duty, generosity, truthfulness, and friendship, are expressed across dozens of these different languages. So in this sense, the diversity doesn't dilute the identity, it actually performs it in a multitude of voices. So this brings us to the big question, right? The critical objection. If you're going to define a nation's core identity this way,
what happens to the people who don't fit neatly under that canopy? Isn't this whole idea, well, exclusionary?
Now, the census data shows over 81% of the population identifying as Hindu and about 8% as Buddhist. But the source material suggests we shouldn't see this as a simple division. Instead, it reflects a single unified cultural ecosystem, where Hinduism and Buddhism are almost treated as two branches of the same spiritual philosophy.
So here, the key counterarguments are laid out really clearly. To the charge that it threatens minorities, the rebuttal is that the very nature of Sanatan in Nepal has always been inclusive, a welcoming canopy. To the idea that it's just nostalgia, the vision is framed as being totally forward-looking. And on the question of using a more neutral word, the argument is that Sanatan is simply the most accurate name for the reality that's already on the ground.
And this is the core of that forward-looking vision. It's not about going back in time. It's about integrating a deep cultural heritage with the needs of a modern state. Think seismic codes for ancient pagodas, or using digital records to manage traditional trusts. Modernization without amnesia. So if you accept this civilizational identity, what does it actually mean for the future of the country? How does a big idea like this translate into a way of governing? The idea of a Sanatan republic is built on these key principles. First, stewardship, protecting and modernizing heritage. Second, language, honoring all the mother tongues while using Nepali as that common link. Third, service, demanding clean and accountable government. Fourth, environment, treating the earth as a sacred trust. And fifth, education, teaching both modern skills like coding and traditional culture, so kids can both earn well and belong well. Ultimately, the argument concludes with this powerful metaphor. Recognizing Nepal as a Sanatan civilization isn't about creating something new or imposing an identity from the top down. It's simply about giving a name to the deep, historical river of culture that, in the author's view, has carried everyone in the nation along with it this whole time. So we're left with a question that resonates far, far beyond Nepal's borders. In a rapidly globalizing world, how can any nation find strength and stability in its own unique, ancient identity, while also meeting the demands of modern, inclusive, and accountable governance? It's a fundamental challenge, and one that, in many ways, affects all of us.